You're watching a recorded session from our virtual conference, Freelance Fest, brought to you by Top of the Funnel. Freelance Fest featured amazing sessions on everything from cold pitching and building a freelance pipeline to optimizing your LinkedIn profile. You can watch all of those sessions here on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check those out and subscribe. But I also want to invite you to become a member of Top of the Funnel. You can join over 4,000 writers, freelancers, entrepreneurs, and marketers who ask questions, share feedback, post pet pictures, find work opportunities inside our Slack community. It's 100% free to join. Just visit jointofu.co and sign up. Enjoy the workshop. As we mentioned before, we are going to be having a Q&A. So backstage right now, have our friends Lizzie, Davey, and Lashay Lewis, who are going to be joining us here in just a moment to answer your questions, etc. So first of all, if you have questions and you have not already posted them in the chat, please post those in the chat. We will bring them on in just a second here, and we will go through as many questions as we possibly can. We've got about 30 minutes here to answer questions. So let me just check in with them and make sure that they're good. Lizzie, Lashay, how y'all feeling? Can we get a thumbs up here? Good, ready to go? Okay, all right, we're gonna bring them on stage here. Hey y'all, how's it going?
Hi.
Oh,
hello, guys.
Lashay, looks like you're muted. Oh, there you go.
There we go. How's it going?
Good. Hey, thank you all so much for joining us. I'm really excited. Well, first of all, both of your workshops were amazing. I know we had a ton of folks in the chat here commenting and asking questions already. So I know everyone loved those. And thanks so much for joining us today.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's just jump in. As I said, by the way, one more reminder for the chat here. If you all have questions for Lizzie or Lashay, either just about their work in general or about their workshop, or I guess for myself as well, I'm happy to answer questions. Post those in the chat. Otherwise, I'd love to just start with a very basic question. I think that everyone always is asking, how do you find most of your clients today as a freelancer? Lizzie, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So these days, I'd say like 90% is probably referrals, and then the other 10%, actually maybe like 7% is posting on LinkedIn and my online presence, and then finding me through my website. And then 3%, so maybe twice a year, I go on like what I call a pitching sprint, where I'll pitch brands that I want to work with that have been on my dream list. It takes me like 6 months to psych myself up. So yeah, like every 6 months I'll pitch some brands that I really want to work with. But yeah, I'd say 90% of the time at the moment it's referrals. So usually clients referring me to other people or other freelancers referring me.
That's awesome. And Lashay, what about you?
Yeah, so when I was starting, just to preface this a little bit, I had zero audience, zero personal brand, really starting from the ground up. But what I've been able to do is guest podcasting has been a huge growth lever for me. So when I first started, I'm like, okay, this is going to take a while to build an audience, but I'm like, I want to do things sooner than later. So how can I extract authority from other people and bring it over to me? And I don't know, it's like guest podcasting is just that thing that ramps up really quickly. I happened to land on a really big show that happened to be in my niche, which was Dave Gearhart over at Exit 5. And that created a flywheel. So once I got on that podcast, I had dozens of other ones reaching out. And from then, I first got on his pod last year. From then until now, I have not had to reach out to one pod to be a guest. Everyone reaches out to me. So if anybody's thinking about, growing their audience from scratch, guest podcasting, I highly recommend it. And then I almost look at it like a funnel, right? So guest podcasting is the top of the funnel where people recognize me and they're like, oh, she's cool. Let me go follow her. Then they go on LinkedIn. And then within LinkedIn, there's another smaller funnel, which is like top, mid, and bottom. Top of funnel being like story-based type of content, stuff like that. Middle funnels like how I do this thing, really kind of flexing your expertise a little bit. And then bottom of funnel, showing the results that you got for other clients that make people want to come and sign on and work with you.
I love that. And actually, I think that's a perfect setup for one of the questions that somebody asked in the chat, which is sort of cross-pollinating these two stories. So Lizzie, would you say that fits in the active or passive category from your workshop?
So I would say that is passive, because you're not kind of actively asking for work. You're basically putting yourself out there. I consider anything that's like growing your online presence or putting your name out there as passive marketing, because you're not kind of directly seeking work, but that's kind of like a byproduct of it. So yeah, I would say passive for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And building that brand and all that stuff. Lashay, by the way, how, if you don't mind sharing, like, how did you get into that, like, podcasting? Like, were you actively pitching, or were people approaching you, or how did that sort of unfold?
It's a great question. So right before I started doing all that, I had a podcast guesting coach, because was super insecure, did not want to be on camera, did not want to pitch people to be on their show, have people tell me no. Come to find out, people did tell me no, which is hilarious, because it's like, and this is a lesson for people too, like, just because somebody tells you no the first time doesn't mean it's no forever. So when I got on the bigger podcast, everybody that had told me no prior had came back and was like, oh, well, can you, and I'm like, oh. But yeah, totally. Like, I had training on that, but I would find the people in my space, right? So understand what niche you're playing in, and then find podcasts that sit directly in that niche. One cool thing you could do too is, like, if you're wondering which ones you should go after, look at their reviews, right? So if you go on, like, Apple or Spotify or things like that, check out how many reviews they have, and you can kind of gauge how big the audience is based on how many reviews. So if it's like 5 to 10 reviews, probably smaller. If it's like 20 to 50, getting a little bit bigger. 100 plus, they've got some listeners. So that's a good way to kind of gauge, okay, who to go after as it relates to who do I pitch to be on their pod.
I love that. And Lashay, I don't know how much of my workshop you caught there, but sort of a similar strategy to the guest posting ladder that I talked about, right? Which is like, you're sort of starting at a certain level and kind of building your credibility, and then that leads to bigger and bigger opportunities.
Yes.
I love that. I want to transition a little bit here. We have a bunch of questions about different specific strategies, Lizzie, that you mentioned in your workshop. So one question right away, some folks were asking about, like, job boards and stuff. Like, what are your feelings now in 2024 about sort of I guess, like, applying to jobs that are posted on, like, a job board? Is that worthwhile, or where do you sort of rate that in terms of value?
I don't rate it highly. I think the only way that I would consider doing it now is if there was, like, a super niche job board. And I know that there are some like Slack channels that also have job postings, but they're so oversubscribed now. No offense to Tofu and the job postings. I know that lots of brands do it, and it is really useful for freelancers who kind of need that extra work and don't know where to look. I have had some success. I think I did actually land a role through the Tofu job board, but I think it was because I was literally the first person to respond. So I think if you're early, like, it pays to be on it and early, and that's the only way that it kind of works now. And I've seen it from the other side. So I've put out job postings, like outsourcing and contractors, and after, like, the first 10 responses, like, it's just really, really draining trying to go through everyone. So if you're like 15, number 25, number 60, like, there's just no way that the person who's going through all of those applications still has the energy and the motivation to do it. So I would say yes, if you find niche job boards, and also if you're on it and getting early, then yes. Otherwise, maybe not your best use of time.
Yeah. And I think too, both of your workshops, I think, hit on important points related to that, which is, first of all, Lizzie's, being about doing a mix of passive and active, right? So if your only strategy is pitching job posts as they show up on job boards, then, that's probably not enough. And then to Lashay's, workshop about niching down, like the better defined your offer is and the better fit you are for those jobs, and the more you're going to stand out when 1,000 people apply for that gig, right? So speaking of Lashay, it sounds like maybe you're not really doing a lot of pitching, but is that part of your repertoire, or are you generally just getting inbound leads at this point?
Yeah, so I have been in a spot before where I have pitched, but to be totally frank with all y'all, like I hated it so much. I was like, I can't do this. Like, but no, like again, back to the guest podcasting point, it's like everything has been inbound up until this point. Inbound sets you up for really cool, like kind of like other strategies too. So for example, paid. So I know LinkedIn has like this new kind of like boost your post type of thought leadership ads. And it's cool because the people that come in inbound, you can use as like an audience to retarget more people and find, so it's like inbound is just kind of good to play off of for other strategies. It also, I find that it positions you a little bit. So this is for me. Maybe I seen somebody say like, Abigail sounds like every introvert ever. Yes, huge introvert. So for me, it's like when people come in, it positions me as like that authority to where I don't have to be as scared to say, okay, do you want to work with me? So on and so forth, giving my pricing, mainly because in my mind, you came to me looking for a service. So it's less like I'm knocking on your door like, hey, do you want to? And it's like more you coming to me because you know what you need already.
Yeah, totally. And I think, again, I feel like there's just so much like sort of cross value here, but I think going back to like Lizzie's workshop and all of her, the different strategies and tactics that you can use to generate leads. I always tell people, don't try to do everything. Yes, you need to have a mix, but pick a few things that work really well and fit with your personality, right? If you're outgoing, then maybe you're better at pitching or getting people on the phone. If you're not, then maybe you rely more on inbound, but pick those couple things and sort of stick with your lane, right? You gotta stay in your lane, if you will. Lashay, another question for you from Gaspard. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that correctly, or at least not butchering it. He was asking in your workshop, the first section you're talking about sort of choosing your niche, and you've got the Venn diagram and stuff. And he's wondering, do you have any tips or a process for sort of validating that people will pay for a specific like niche or productized service?
Yeah. So this is usually easier to spot if you're transitioning from being an in-house marketer, because if you're doing something in-house, 9 times out of 10, the open market will pay you to do that thing. I also want to preface that by saying, because this was my situation, if you are in-house and you are doing a specific function that you feel that is not being valued, it does not mean that people in the open market will not pay for that. So for me, I did a lot of bottom of funnel in-house, and bottom of funnel is just like a very specific thing. Like even within the funnel, the proverbial funnel itself is a very specific thing. So I do a very specific thing within that specific thing, right? So it's like, it wasn't valued that much in-house, but the moment I took it to the open market and I was like, I do this thing, people, I mean, this might be exaggerating a little bit, but it's like people blew down the doors, and it was because nobody else had come to market with that specific positioning. And bottom of funnel is difficult for people to do, mainly because it involves deep expertise in not just content marketing, but product marketing too. And then you get into a whole list of other things of like teams not being aligned and stuff like that. But yes, going to market for me was just, it's just the thing that I did in-house, that it was a mix between like what I liked, what I was good at, and then you find like what the market will pay for, which is I kind of talked about in the workshop. It's like your solo role is going to fit right in the middle of those 3 things. Yeah. So if you're getting paid for it in-house, 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to pay you for it if you're not in-house too.
Yeah. I think too, from my experience, I think some of it's just experimentation, right? By the way, shout out to Erica Schneider. I know she posted a bunch of stuff about her kind of building her businesses. And that was one of the things that I've taken away from following her journey is, she just like puts a thing out there, sees what the response is. And if it's good, then she rolls with it. If it's bad, then she tries something else, right? Like she's just experimenting. Yes. I feel like, that's maybe the unspoken secret of freelancing and entrepreneurship in general, is that none of us have the perfect playbook. Like we're all kind of figuring it out. You just don't see the times that we failed as often as you see the times that we won.
Yeah. Yes.
Lizzie, I'd love to know what your take is on sort of niching. I don't like, to what extent do you consider yourself sort of having a specific niche?
I think now I would say I have a very specific niche, but the way that I got here was not like I sat down one day and I wasn't like, right, you know what, I'm going to write for this specific type of brand. I actually started as a travel writer. So I was writing for travel brands. I was writing content for lifestyle brands, writing about dogs and bats and real estate in Puerto Rico. And I've never been to Puerto Rico. So like literally anything I would take in the early days. And then it took me about three years or so to really settle into kind of where I found what I enjoyed writing about, what I was good at writing about, and what people would pay me for. And I think it takes it doesn't have to take a long time, but it can take a long time to figure that out. And I think the mistake that a lot of new freelancers make is that they sit down on day one and they're like, right, okay, I'm going to choose a niche right now, and that's going to be my niche forever. And like the truth is, like, I hadn't come from in-house, so I didn't know like where the demand was. I was just like, I like writing about travel, so I'm going to do that. And then it was fine, but after 3 years I was like, right, the pay is crap, and there's only so many ways that you can write about the beach in Barcelona. So what can I do now? So it was kind of like an organic process to get to where I am today. It wasn't really a conscious decision. And I think every freelancer has to go through that. And I know lots of people are like, but how do I choose niche? How do I choose something that I know is going to pay well and where clients need writers? And the answer is like, you kind of just have to figure it out. Like a lot of things with freelancing. And I know that's a really like naff answer, but it's true. Like you just have to experiment and figure out what works for you.
But by the way, Lizzie, the chat was going wild over your use of the word naff. So
just, I love that. It's so British. I realized after this,
they love it. Really, they love it. Yeah. Well, I love that insight, and I want to stick on this point for a moment, because I think this is where a lot of people get stuck, right? So if I can maybe thread the line, the logic there a little bit, I think the key takeaway that I'm hearing from both Lashay and Lizzie is, yes, pick a niche, but no, don't just like throw a dartboard or a dart at the dartboard and like let that decide your niche. Like you have to actually get in there, get some like hands-on experience, figure out what people are interested in, what people pay for. Maybe that's from your in-house work or from just talking to people in the industry, and sort of have like an actual data-driven decision-making process. Is that right, Lashay? Does that sort of fit with what your recommendation is?
It does. Another thing I would say too, so let's say like you're not in-house right now and you're like, okay, I need to figure out a niche to go after. Like, so what I did in the beginning, because at first I labeled myself as like a fractional content strategist. Again, the word fractional was kind of popping at the time. And it was like, honestly, it was more of an internal use of the word than external, which is like really another word for part-time. But I mean, I was like looking at job descriptions and I was like, okay, will people pay me for this thing that I want to do? Because when I was in-house, my role was like a senior content strategist, but I was also kind of a content marketing manager. And what I noticed is that, and for me specifically, I work in SaaS. So I noticed that companies that had 11 through 50 employees had a tighter job description than jobs that had like 51 through 200 employees. So for example, a company with 51 through 200 employees would be like, okay, so our content marketing manager is going to do ebooks and white papers and YouTube and social media and just all these things. Basically them trying to like lump a head of content position to a content marketing manager. Like I'm ranting right now, but I'm just like, I hate that so much. Versus like the startups where it's like, okay, we want you to talk to our internal teams. We want you to pull insights from that information. We want you to do some keyword research. We want you to focus on the blog. It was a very tight job description, which kind of helped me form my positioning around who to go after. So when I figured that out, I started going after startups and it just aligned perfectly. And I use job descriptions to kind of help me find the pathway to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And maybe this kind of gets to Rachel's question, by the way. Shout out to Rachel. Good to see you here. So Rachel saying, she's an in-house marketer, but she's been sort of a generalist, as you're saying, right? Like a lot of these in-house roles, they tend to, you do a little bit of everything, right? So how do you transition from that to finding a niche? If I can say one thing, and feel free to check me if this is wrong, but I feel like the thing to keep in mind with choosing a niche is that there are a lot of things that are not going to work. And then there are a lot of things that are going to work. It's not like there's one niche and you have to find the right niche. Like you can do a lot of different things. So it's okay to be like, hey, I've got all these general skills. I like these 3 things. I'm going to try those 3 things and see which one seems to resonate with the market. That would be my approach. Any thoughts on that? Lizzie or Lashay, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, even now I have some clients that don't tightly fit into the niche that I'm in. Because we are human and we enjoy different things and we have lots of different interests. Like we're not one-dimensional. And I think a lot of freelancers that I know have kind of this core niche that they market themselves in, but then also they're doing work for other types of brands that they have they're more passionate about or they have an interest in. So I think it's finding that balance between, yes, like in some ways you do need to be considered an expert to make high rates and land better clients, but also like you want to enjoy it as well. So there's definitely finding that balance between the two.
Totally. Lashay, would you say there's like a defensible, potentially, obviously, again, we would want to validate this further, but is there potentially like a defensible niche around like being that generalist and maybe like sort of taming the chaos of content? Like to me, like that, maybe it's not a specialized skill set in the traditional like T-shaped way, but like that feels like a skill that comes from being a generalist, is just being able to sort of connect all those dots as a superpower.
1,000%. So like I beat the niche down, whatever y'all want to call it. I beat that drum a lot, but generalists are still needed. And I tend to find that generalists usually are the people that go in fractional for like fractional head of content, fractional head of digital. But generalists are needed because what I find from a lot of companies, at least since I've been consulting over the past year, is budget bias. So meaning like if somebody is in a high level role and they are not a generalist, let's say, for example, they believe in paid ads and they believe that dumping money in paid ads is just going to get us a return quicker than organic. It's like they will pour most of their budget into that thing because that's their bias, versus a generalist that's like, okay, I see how every piece of this contributes to the greater goal. I think generalists are absolutely needed, mainly to help bring consultants like us in and freelancers like us in. But again, like when you have somebody that's just very biased toward a specific strategy or way of doing that strategy, it's just like, okay, we're going to dump all of our money here and, kind of, hope for the best, versus a generalist that's like, okay, we know that we need organic marketing and organic rolls into the paid. And then we need YouTube, and then YouTube can be repurposed to email. It's like they see things at a 10,000 foot view versus zooming in and seeing this one thing and we're going to beat this thing to death. You know what I mean? So I think generalists are absolutely needed. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that there's maybe another point to pull out of that, which is that niche can mean a lot of different things, right? So obviously, Lashay, you have a niche in that you are focused primarily on a specific like type of content that fits into specific structures. That's one way to have a niche. Another niche is, hey, I only focus on, e-commerce or, shopping brands or whatever, a sort of an industry or vertical focus niche. And then there's also like a problem solving niche. Like if you have this problem, you hire me, I come in, I fix it, right? In my opinion, that's the way to go. If you're like a generalist, is you identify the specific pains that companies have and you come in and say, hey, I've solved this before. And I don't have one skill. I have a bunch of skills that are going to help you solve this problem. And here's how I'm going to do it.
Yep. Totally.
I love that. Okay. So first of all, I'm just going to preface this by saying we've only got about 9 minutes, so there's no way we're going to get through all these questions. But y'all, thank you so much for all of them. I'm going to do my best. We'll get through as many as we possibly can. Let me try to do a little bit of rapid fire here. Lizzie, real quick, couple questions for you around LinkedIn. Do you have any like sort of general tips about how you use LinkedIn, or how to make it most effective as a freelancer?
Yeah, I'm going to try and make this as quick as possible. There are 3 things that I think if you want to get clients through LinkedIn, you have to have. So that's optimization. So your profile needs to be optimized so people can find you.
Shout out to Rachel.
Yeah. And then exactly, yeah, maybe that's better for her. And then the second one is showing up, so having a presence there. So I'm not saying you need to post every day, but you want to be top of people's feeds, because I know I connect with a lot of people and then I never see them again. So you want to be showing up in their feed. And then the third thing is networking, because I mean, LinkedIn is traditionally a networking platform. So you want to be engaging on posts, you want to be connecting with content leads, you want to be connecting with other freelancers. And then not just networking and ghosting, but not connecting and ghosting, but also kind of staying in touch with them. And just generally being visible, I think, is the most important thing on LinkedIn. So optimization, engagement, networking, and most of all, just be visible.
Love that. Let's jump to some questions for you, Lashay. Sorry, I'm figuring out how to use this platform again. Okay, so there are a lot of questions. Lashay, you were talking about, in your sort of line of work, being able to like measure and attribute conversions and that kind of thing. So folks were just asking, let me pull up a specific question here. Okay, so Nikita was asking, you mentioned tracking inbound leads for your Bofu service. How do you track them? What does that actually look like behind the scenes?
So I say this in every live stream, every podcast, GA4 sucks. They shave conversions off of content, things like that. So I've been trying to like find other services that can track that a little bit more tightly. So like services like Lead Feeder, which is owned by Dealfront, and I can't think of Amplitude is another one. And it's one more. Oh, Dream Data. That's another one. So those 3 solutions I like to use. So right now I'm using Lead Feeder for one of my clients, and it gets super specific with like, okay, this piece of content drove in this conversion. But then you get the people that get mad at me like, oh, what about, attribution bias? I'm like, yeah, right. That's a thing. Right. And I don't want to make it seem like, oh, we're doing bottom of funnel and it was my piece alone with no other nurturing or anything that got that conversion. But I more so do that to say the content team does contribute. And I feel like people in content are not appreciated because our numbers aren't tightly tracked like sales. Sales has like, oh, this is my close one rate and how many, like they have numbers to closely stand by them where the marketing team does not. So a lot of times it's harder for us to prove our value. People think content marketing is just like this black box and you just throw shit in it and they don't know what's going to come back out, when that's totally not true. You know what I mean? Like every part of the funnel plays a role in nurturing. So again, the reason like I set that up like that is to show like the content team does indeed contribute. And again, I like bottom of funnel because it's a bit easier to attribute inbound leads, but maybe you don't do bottom of funnel. Maybe you do top of funnel, right? And that objective or that goal that you're trying to hit maybe won't be like conversions. Maybe it'll be like email signups or registrants for webinars or whatever that objective is. But what I want to tell people is like, whatever service you choose to do, make sure that it connects to an objective that the company is looking for. So like, again, I just choose, either Dream Data, Amplitude, or Lead Feeder as of right now to just hook their information up into, and then I have it like in Notion where it just pulls everything in to show, okay, this blog post bought in this inbound lead, and kind of like make that one-to-one attribution.
Yeah, so you're deep in the data behind the scenes is what it's all here there for sure.
Like you have to be. You're not, we're not, marketers aren't appreciated like that. So if I could step to the forefront and say, okay, yeah, we do contribute every day of the week, I'm going to do that for sure.
And a real quick follow-up question also from Nikita. Is there any kind of like guarantee or anything that comes with this work that you're saying like, hey, our Bofu content's going to drive this many leads, or how do you sort of quantify it up in the initial discussions?
Is that question for me?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I should have clarified.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. So when you onboard a client, is there discussion about like what that outcome is going to be? Like it's going to generate X number of leads, or is going to convert at a certain percent, or anything like that?
That's a great question. I mean, you can never really tell them exactly what the number is going to be. You can kind of preface it and say, okay, these generate inbound leads quicker than anything else that you can do on the content marketing side. I don't give them a specific number because, as we all know, SEO is not anything that you can directly put your finger on and say, I definitively say that this is going to happen. Like, it's just not true. But I'll give them, what I'll do is I'll show them results from previous clients and say, okay, we got this many inbound leads doing this much. And I'll kind of like generalize it. So for example, I'll be like, typically it takes 3 months to start generating inbound leads, because on average, that's what I find. It takes 3 months, but it takes maybe like 6 to 9 Bofu posts to start seeing attributable pipeline. So I'll just like take all the clients that I've had and kind of like group up that number a little bit and find an average. But I never say definitively, okay, we're going to get this much, because it's just not true. You don't know how much you're going to get. SEO is very unpredictable. So yeah. I try to just like generalize it like that for them the best I can. Yeah.
Yeah. I call that outcomes matching. So you sort of take their scenario, you look at your past clients and you say, okay, you know, I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but based on where we're at, what we're trying to do, what your budget is, what the timeline is, et cetera, you know, here's what's happened in the past. So we can use that to kind of give us a ballpark of what might happen in the future.
Yes.
Amazing. So we are just about out of time. I do want to ping one final question, because I know a lot of people are probably going to be interested in the answer to this. Lizzie, if you're a new freelancer and you need clients yesterday, what's the one tactic or strategy you would go to first?
I would be connecting with as many content leads as possible. I would go hard on pitching. I think if you need clients urgently, like, you have to focus on the active marketing strategies, because yes, building a presence on LinkedIn is great, and yes, posting on social media is great and everything, but it's not going to give you results immediately. Like Lashay says, like, it can take 3 months to start seeing pipeline on stuff like that. So I think, yeah, I would go really hard on active marketing. I would write up a big list of prospects to pitch. I'd be connecting with as many content leads, booking in as many virtual coffee chats as I could, and just really going against every bone in my body and putting myself out there.
I love that. And if I could add to that, I think, you know, yes, pitching, and also, like you said, just networking, coffee chats, just building those relationships, I think is, you know, maybe overlooked. So, okay, y'all, once again, I know we didn't have time to get to all the questions, but we are at time here. So I need to wrap up so we can move on to the next thing here. Lashay, Lizzie, thank you both so much. Amazing insights. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us. Yes.
Awesome.